Hello ladies and gentlemen, it's Valkrin with a video topic today about team compositions in Season 4 and why it's so important to have a good team composition. And lastly, the most important part, and the thing I hope you get out of this video, is how to correctly understand and evaluate what different champions can bring to a team composition. And once you have that team composition, understand what you should do with that team composition to win the game. And that's the introduction to the video, and I also like to introduce myself. I'm Valkrin. I'm a Season 3, Season 4 Challenger player. Ever since the beta, I've been playing League of Legends, and I've always been a top 100 player on the North American ladder. Hopefully you guys can get a lot out of the understanding I tried to share with you through my videos, and keep on watching for the next part of the video. Thanks for watching. Okay, so let's break it down. You need to pick champions that not only are going to be successful in solo queue, but you need to pick champions that fit with what your team composition is building towards in the pick order. We'll go more into that later, but let's talk about the importance of the team composition this season. Why Valkrin this season over other seasons has team composition become such a big key word? Well, because games in Season 4 have so many anti-snowballing effects put into it, more than any other season that League of Legends has ever seen, this is the hardest season to end games, regardless of your bracket. And it just has to go with how the game has progressed. You need a good, well-rounded team composition to have a better chance at just flat out being able to end the game now. You can't just stomp the early game completely and then just get a free win. Now you actually have to have a decent team composition, because there have been games frequently that I've seen in every bracket of play that one team will get significantly far ahead, but just, because they had low scaling champions and not the right team composition, they'll end up losing later into the game, because games will almost undoubtedly reach late game in majority of the cases. So let's talk about what makes a well-rounded team composition. Now I have 7 different little topics here talking about different subtopics of what makes a champion fit into a team composition, or what you need for a good team composition. And the first topic is talking about you need a good mixture of AD and AP damage. And this is semi-obvious, but common sense isn't that common. You need to have AP and AD damage so the enemy team can't just reach that 50-minute mark and have 400 armor against both your Renekton and Zed solo laners and your AD carry and then become unkillable. You need to have at least one AP carry on your team, top, mid, maybe some secondary AP damage from a jungler or support, and that helps out as well. But you basically just want to make sure the enemy team can't just get one defensive stat and completely shut down your damage mid to late game. You need a team composition that is actually capable of sieging towers. If you can take a lead, but you can't actually kick the enemy team off their tower, chances are the game is going to keep on progressing towards late game if you can't actually take their inhibitor and keep on going. You need to have like ranged poke, ranged attacks, just to be able to take down the tower and to push them off the turret. And of course that you don't have to have siege, but if you don't have a good team fighting comp, then things become tricky. Number 3, talking about the fact that having ranged engage / just engaged champions in general makes it easier to make picks happen. So if you don't have awesome siege potential, then you're going to need to make sure you have some sort of engage. That way you can pick them off one by one in their jungle, and you might not even ever have to get to the point where it's a 5-on-5 under their turret. But if you have neither of that, you see where you start running into issues. Number 4, talking about the fact that you're going to need AoE magic damage or AoE damage in general just to be able to defend your turret. And this is a really important one, because the key to making it to late game is being able to defend your turrets. If you can't defend your turrets because no one in your team has wave clear, then yeah, the enemy team that has an early game comp might be able to just bulldoze through your turrets and end the game super fast. But if you have AoE damage, if you have a Ziggs on your team, if you have some other champion that has amazing wave clear, it becomes more difficult for the enemy team to pressure down your towers once they have a lead. And if you have AoE damage, you can stall the game out for the next topic, talking about champions that scale really well. Late game champions. Jax, Karthus, there's so many champions that scale really well that are popular right now. Ryze. So you got to make sure that you at least have some sort of champions on your team that scale reasonably well. And of course you can win with an early game comp, it's just much more risky. The best things to pick right now are champions that not only perform well early game, or can perform well early game, but also scale really well late game. And the sixth topic, talking about how this patch has seen, and this total season has seen, the reintegration of support mid, support top style champions, because they're just so freaking dang strong with, you know, strong late game scaling champions. A Jax with a KO ult can bulldoze through a team and almost single-handedly win a team fight based on having great utility. So, and the last topic, talking about tanks, I mean, that's pretty obvious, but you need tanks to be able to soak up damage and to tank Baron and just to be a threat, and be able to zone your opponents if possible. And I know I've talked about a lot in this one slide, but keep in mind, you don't have to have every single one of these for, you know, a team composition just to win, but you need some of these. Like, if you don't have any of these at all, or no good variation of this at all, then chances are you're going to run into a lot of issues. Okay, so we've sort of broken down like what type of champions you sort of need. Like, you might need wave clear if you don't necessarily have the best early game champions, because then you can defend your turrets and make it to late game. So you're adding combinations to the different variety of champions, and it's creating more beneficial scenarios for you. Okay, so let's say you were in a hypothetical situation where you didn't exactly know what to do. Like, you go into the mid game and you're like, guys, what do we do now? This is a very common problem, because most players, when they hit mid game, they're like, what do we do? We took all their outer turrets. What do we do? You have to be able to recognize what your team composition can do. And this is really important, because if you have a poke comp, like you have a Nidalee in your team, you have like a Jace on your team or something like that, but you're playing like you have a team fight comp, then you're not doing it right, and you're probably going to lose the game, just because of how the champions function. If you're playing Nidalee and you're just jumping into all 5 of the enemy team without throwing any spears, then obviously you're ignoring a big part of her kit. So the big thing about this slide is talking about, you need to be able to recognize what your team composition can do best and stick with it. You know, if you have a poke comp, avoid hard engages before you poke them down. If you have a late game comp, don't do these crazy, you know, ridiculous plays early game, because if you have better scaling champions later in the game, you can just chill out and kind of let the game progress. Just try not to fall that far behind early game. And if you have an early game comp, you shouldn't be relaxed and playing like you have a late game comp. You need to be pressing your advantages, maybe doing those 15-minute Barons and stuff like that. Okay, so let's go into a hypothetical situation where you were purple side. We won't even talk about blue side picks. We're just going to focus on purple side picks this game. So purple side, the blue side gets first pick. So purple side, in your pick order, you get 2 champions. So the first 2 picks end up being Wukong and Thresh. And ideally, in solo queue, the first couple pick orders should determine what the last couple players pick in terms of what type of champions to fit a nice little team composition. So let's say we're going to work towards that. We're going to pretend like that's what every player does. So in this situation, the first 2 picks pick really nice champions to follow up the final 3 picks for, because with these 2 champions, you have AoE AD damage, AoE CC, you have an engage already, you have pick potential from Thresh, and you've got utility from Thresh. So you've got a nice little bare bones foundation for your team composition already. But ideally, these last 3 picks should try to fit more towards this AoE team composition that Wukong and Thresh have started. So what ends up happening is Malzahar and Corki are locked in, and these are 2, you know, pretty random solo queue champions, and these happen in solo queue. You'll get a Malzahar in your team or something like that. Even though he's not the most optimal mid laner, it still works. Malzahar still has wave clear, medium range poke type things, and CC. So it still can work with this team composition. And so far, this team comp is looking pretty nice. It's got a good mixture of AD and AP damage. Not the best poke, but they still have poke built into the comp. So for the 5th pick and final pick, what would you want for this team composition? And what I would want fitting together with this team composition, what we've talked so far, is you sort of need more of a front line, since you do have a good mixture of AD and AP damage. You have some CC, some pick potential, some engage. You're filling up a lot of those subtopics that I was talking about in the previous slides. But what you really need here, or ideally would be another tank or another something to throw into the AoE crowd control. But what ends up happening, and since this is solo queue, this is pretty common, you end up with a Vayne top as your last pick. So what do you do as a team? Well, you have to recognize that you're no longer going to be possibly a superior team fighting comp unless they just don't have the best team fighting comp at all. So you would need to adapt your overall strategy based on having this Vayne top last pick. And the way you respond to this is not to call them out and to insult them because they picked Vayne top and you wanted something else top lane. You just have to adapt to the situation. And even though you don't end up with a tank top, you can still make this work. And the way I would make this work is you would want Vayne to split push later into the game and still run a team fighting base comp with the rest of the 4 of you. And you could still maybe team fight and win with a Vayne top, but that's something I would do because Vayne would be better at split pushing, and you would have a lot of squishies in the team fight already. So, and the overall secret to this, guys, and this is the final slide, number 3, this topic, you're going to have to accept that not everyone will follow any sort of strategy in solo queue at all. They're just going to pick champions based on what they feel. But that doesn't mean you have to play the same way. That doesn't mean you have to forego strategy completely. Because if your teammates or one teammate on your solo queue team is just kind of ignoring what the team competition is building towards, that doesn't mean you should ignore it as well. So overall, you have to make sure that even if your teammates feel, are quote-unquote trolling or something like that, you need to make sure you're at least trying your best, because the only thing that carries with you every game is your own gameplay, your own decision-making, and your own thought processes. Thanks, guys, and please subscribe to my YouTube channel. See ya.